Hello, my name is Eric Dubay, and I'm a flat earther. Contrary to what you have been told to believe about me by the mainstream media, the government education system, and society in general, I am not an idiot, uneducated, or a religious zealot. I am a college graduate, spent 7 years teaching at a prestigious university, have published 5 books, and am not a follower of any religion. I was once a spinning ball earth believer like yourself. In fact, the only difference between spinning ball earthers and flat earthers is that flat earthers have done their research. Of course, however, you will be told the opposite, that flat earthers are uneducated morons, unaware of modern scientific theories. But the reality is, every flat earther is well educated regarding the spinning ball earth fantasy presented by NASA, taught in schools, and accepted as gospel truth by the gullible masses. In fact, you will find the average flat earther is far more knowledgeable about the spinning ball earth we are supposedly living on than the average spinning ball earth believer. This is because flat earthers are all people who attempted to prove for themselves whether or not Earth is the way modern scientific and astronomical theory preaches, and discovered that it most certainly is not. There are hundreds of proofs and scientific experiments which have conclusively shown the Earth to be a stationary plane, but you have never and will never hear about these heavily censored experiments in our controlled media. You never hear of the Michelson-Morley, Michelson-Gale, Sagnac, Cantor, and Airy experiments, for example, all of which proved the Earth to be motionless. You also never hear of the Robotham, Blunt, or Carpenter experiments, all of which proved the Earth to be a level plane devoid of any curvature. Instead, you are repeatedly shown NASA images of a spinning ball Earth and astronauts in zero-G space. You are told the oceans curve around and stick to the underside of a spinning ball thanks to Newton's magical gravity. You are told Eratosthenes measured shadows to prove the ball, and Magellan circumnavigated the ball. Again, us flat earthers are well aware of the supposed proofs and alleged evidence we are given regarding the spinning ball Earth fantasy. The difference is, we have further analyzed these supposed proofs and found glaring holes in them even larger than the size of NASA's annual budget. I have personally debunked every such claim of supposed spinning ball Earth evidence I could find in my book The Flat Earth Conspiracy, and also compiled 200 proofs Earth is not a spinning ball in my book of the same title. I will not reiterate myself here, as you can read these online for free now in over a dozen languages, but suffice to say, there is no aspect of the spinning globe model that stands up to critical scrutiny, and every alleged proof offered is easily refuted. The spinning globe and every argument used to defend it is simply pseudoscience masquerading as truth. The pictures and videos presented to the public by NASA and other government space agencies are as real as a Hollywood motion picture and as scientific as science fiction. Science facts, on the other hand, prove the flat Earth. For example, it is the natural physics of all fluids to remain perfectly level and flat until disturbed in some way. If dammed up and released, all liquids will quickly disperse in every unobstructed direction until finding their new level. This ever-present, never-broken law of physics is so reliable that builders use water spirit levels to level all their constructions. When you look out at the sea horizon, from as high as amateur balloons and rockets have ever gone, the waterline always remains completely level and flat. If, however, the Earth is a spinning ball, as NASA and modern astronomy claim, then somehow the massive oceans must all in defiance of physics curve thousands of miles around an irregular, pear-shaped oblate spheroid. In reality, measurements have been repeatedly taken throughout history until modern times, using lasers, levels, sextants, and theodolites to test for the Earth's supposed curvature, and every time have proven what our eyes and experience tell us to be true. The Earth simply does not curve downwards 8 inches per mile squared, as dictated by spherical trigonometry and NASA's own calculations for a globe Earth 24,900 miles in equatorial circumference. This mythical curvature exists only in the fisheye lens footage they constantly film and the fake CG images of Earth they constantly propagate. Now, dear spinning ball Earth believer, There is much more you must learn, and even more that you must unlearn, to understand fully the depth of this deception. It will take more than just a few minutes of flat earth research to overcome a lifetime of indoctrination, but I implore you to do just that. Try and prove to yourself whether or not the spinning ball earth we are taught to believe since kindergarten is in fact a reality. I can speak on behalf of every flat earther when I say that's exactly what we did. We did our due diligence in researching and proving one way or the other whether this seemingly flat, motionless plane we all stand upon is actually a tilting, wobbling, rotating, and revolving, pear-shaped oblate spheroid hurtling around the sun. Or whether everything is actually just as it seems. Water always remains level and flat. The horizon always remains level and flat. The earth is motionless, just as it seems, and the sun, moon, and stars all revolve over and around us, just as it appears. I encourage you to please explore this fascinating subject for yourself by viewing the many other Flat Earth documentaries and interviews on my YouTube channel, and visiting the International Flat Earth Research Society at ifrs.123.st. Thank you. It is part of the natural physics of water and other fluids to always find their level and remain flat. If disturbed in any way, motion ensues until the flat level is resumed. If dammed up, then released, the nature of all liquids is to quickly flood outwards, taking the easiest course towards finding its new level. From W.T. Lynn's First Principles of Natural Philosophy, the upper surface of a fluid at rest is a horizontal plane, because if a part of the surface were higher than the rest, those parts of the fluid which were under it would exert a greater pressure upon the surrounding parts than they receive from them, so that motion would take place amongst the particles and continue until there were none at a higher level than the rest, that is, until the upper surface of the whole mass of fluid became a horizontal plane. If the earth is an extended flat plane, then this fundamental physical property of fluids finding and remaining level is consistent with experience and common sense. If, however, the earth is a giant sphere tilted on its vertical axis, spinning through never-ending space, then it follows that truly flat, consistently level surfaces do not exist here. Moreover, if the earth is spherical, then it follows that the surface of all Earth's water, including the massive oceans, must maintain a certain degree of convexity. But this is contrary to the fundamental physical nature of water to always be and remain level. From William Thomas Wiseman's The Earth an Irregular Plane. The surface of all water, when not agitated by natural causes, such as winds, tides, earthquakes, etc., is perfectly level. The sense of sight proves this to every unprejudiced and reasonable mind. Can any so-called scientist, who teaches that the earth is a whirling globe, take a heap of liquid water, whirl it around, and so make rotundity? He cannot. Therefore, it is utterly impossible to prove that an ocean is a whirling, rotund section of a globular earth, rushing through space at the lying given rate of false philosophers. If we were living on a whirling ball earth, every pond, lake, marsh, canal, and other large body of standing water, each part would have to comprise a slight arc or semicircle curveting downwards from the central summit. For example, if the ball Earth were 25,000 miles in circumference, as NASA and modern astronomers say, then spherical trigonometry dictates the surface of all standing water must curve downwards an easily measurable 8 inches per mile, multiplied by the square of the distance. This means along a 6-mile channel of standing water, the Earth would dip 6 feet on either end from the central peak. To the benefit of true science, and to the detriment of modern astronomy's pseudoscience, such an experiment can and has been tested. In Cambridge, England, there is a 20-mile canal called the Old Bedford, which passes in a straight line through the fenlands known as the Bedford Level. The water has no interruption from locks or water gates of any kind, and remains stationary, making it perfectly suitable for determining whether any amount of convexity or curvature actually exists. In the latter part of the 19th century, Dr. Samuel Rowbotham, a famous flat earther and author of the fine book Earth Not a Globe, an experimental inquiry into the true figure of the Earth, proving it a plane without axial or orbital motion and the only material world in the universe, traveled to the Bedford level and performed a series of experiments to determine whether the surface of standing water is flat or convex. Samuel Robotham wrote, "A boat with a flagstaff, the top of the flag 5 feet above the surface of the water, was directed to sail from a place called Welch's Dam, a well-known ferry passage, to another called Welney Bridge. These 2 points are 6 statute miles apart. The author, with a good telescope, went into the water, and with the eye about 8 inches above the surface, observed the receding boat during the whole period required to sail to Welney Bridge. The flag and the boat were distinctly visible throughout the whole distance. There could be no mistake as to the distance passed over, as the man in charge of the boat had instructions to lift one of his oars to the top of the arch the moment he reached the bridge. The experiment commenced about 3 o'clock in the afternoon of a summer's day, and the sun was shining brightly and nearly behind or against the boat during the whole of its passage. Every necessary condition had been fulfilled, and the result was to the last degree definite and satisfactory. The conclusion was unavoidable, that the surface of the water for a length of 6 miles did not to any appreciable extent decline or curvate downwards from the line of sight. But if the earth is a globe, the surface of the 6 miles length of water would have been 6 feet higher in the center than at the 2 extremities. From this experiment it follows that the surface of standing water is not convex, and therefore that the earth is not a globe. On the contrary, this simple experiment is all sufficient to prove that the surface of the water is parallel to the line of sight, and is therefore horizontal, and that the earth cannot be other than a plane. In a second experiment, Dr. Robotham placed 7 flags along the edge of the water, each 1 mile distant from the next, with their tops positioned 5 feet above the surface. Near the last one he also positioned a longer 8-foot staff bearing a 3-foot flag, so that its bottom aligned precisely with the tops of the other flags. He then mounted a telescope at a height of 5 feet behind the first flag and took his observations. If the Earth was a globe of 25,000 miles, each successive flag would have to decline a definite and determined amount below the last. The first and second flags simply established the line of sight. The third flag should then fall 8 inches below the second, the fourth flag 32 inches below, the fifth 6 feet, the sixth 10 feet 8 inches, and the seventh flag should be a clear 16 feet 8 inches below the line of sight. Even if the Earth was a globe of 100,000 miles, an amount of easily measurable curvature should and would still be evident in this experiment. But the reality is, not a single inch of curvature was detected, and the flags all lined up perfectly as consistent with a flat plane. Dr. Robotham wrote, "The rotundity of the Earth would necessitate the above conditions, but as they cannot be found to exist, the doctrine must be pronounced as only a simple theory, having no foundation in fact, a pure invention of misdirected genius, splendid in its comprehensiveness and bearing upon natural phenomena, but nevertheless mathematical and logical necessities compel its denunciation as an absolute falsehood." Dr. Robotham conducted several other experiments using telescopes, spirit levels, and theodolites, special precision instruments used for measuring angles in horizontal or vertical planes. By positioning them at equal heights, aimed at each other successively, he proved over and over the Earth to be perfectly flat for miles without a single inch of curvature. His findings caused quite a stir in the scientific community, and thanks to 30 years of his efforts, the shape of the Earth became a hot topic of debate around the turn of the 19th century. William Carpenter wrote, "Is water level, or is it not?" was a question once asked of an astronomer. "Practically, yes. Theoretically, no," was the reply. Now, when theory does not harmonize with practice, the best thing to do is to drop the theory. It is getting too late now to say, "so much the worse for the facts." To drop the theory which supposes a curved surface to standing water is to acknowledge the facts. Whenever experiments have been tried on the surface of standing water, the surface has always been found to be level. If the Earth were a globe, the surface of all standing water would be convex. This is an experimental proof that the Earth is not a globe. From the June 26, 1896 edition of the English Mechanic, Since any given body of water must have a level surface, no one part higher than another, and seeing that all our oceans, a few inland seas excepted, are connected together, it follows that they are all, virtually, of the same level. Astronomers say the magical magnetism of gravity is what keeps all the oceans of the world stuck to the ball Earth. They say that because the Earth is so massive, by virtue of this mass, it creates a magic force able to hold people, oceans, and atmosphere tightly clung to the underside of the spinning ball. Unfortunately, however, they cannot provide any practical example of this on a scale smaller than the planetary. For example, a spinning wet tennis ball has the exact opposite effect of the supposed ball Earth. Any water poured over it simply falls off the sides, and giving it a spin results in water flying off 360 degrees like a dog shaking off after a bath. Astronomers concede the wet tennis ball example displays the opposite effect of their supposed ball Earth, but claim that at some unknown mass, the magic adhesive properties of gravity suddenly kick in, allowing the spinning wet tennis ball Earth to keep every drop of gravitized water stuck to the surface. Again, their theory flies in the face of all practical evidence, but they've been running with it for 500 years, so why stop now? William Carpenter wrote, "If the Earth were a globe, rolling and dashing through space at the rate of 100 miles in 5 seconds of time, the waters of seas and oceans could not, by any known law, be kept on its surface. The assertion that they could be retained under these circumstances, being an outrage upon human understanding and credulity. But as the earth, that is, the habitable world of dry land, is found to be standing out of the water and in the water of the mighty deep, whose circumferential boundary is ice, we may throw the statement back into the teeth of those who made it, and flaunt before their faces the flag of reason and common sense, inscribed with the proof that the earth is not a globe. In one portion of its long route, the great river Nile flows for 1,000 miles with a fall of only 1 foot. This is a feat which, of course, would be a sheer impossibility if the earth had spherical curvature. Many other rivers, including the Congo in West Africa, the Amazon in South America, and the Mississippi in North America, all flow for thousands of miles in directions totally incompatible with the supposed globularity of the earth as well." Thomas Winship wrote, "Rivers run down to the sea because of the inclination of their beds. Rising at an altitude above sea level, in some cases thousands of feet above the sea, they follow the easiest route to their level, the sea. The Parana and the Paraguay in South America are navigable for over 2,000 miles, and their waters run the same way until they find their level of stability where the sea tides begin. But if the world be a globe, the Amazon in South America, that flows always in an easterly direction, would sometimes be running uphill and sometimes down, according to the movement of the globe. Then the Congo in West Africa, that always pursues a westerly course to the sea, would in the same manner be running alternately up and down. When that point of the globe exactly between them was up, they would both be running up, although in opposite directions. And when the globe took half a turn, they would both be running down. We know from practical experiment that water will find its level, and cannot by any possibility remain other than level, or flat, or horizontal, whatever term may be used to express the idea. It is therefore quite out of the range of possibility that rivers could do as they would have to do on a globe." David Wardlaw Scott wrote, "Who ever heard of a river in any part of its course flowing uphill? Yet this it would require to do were the earth a globe. Rivers like the Mississippi, which flow from the north southwards towards the equator, would need, according to modern astronomic theory, to run upwards, as the earth at the equator is said to bulge out considerably more, or, in other words, is higher than at any other part. Thus the Mississippi, in its immense course of over 3,000 miles, would have to ascend 11 miles before it reached the Gulf of Mexico." And William Carpenter wrote, "There are rivers which flow east, west, north, and south. That is, rivers are flowing in all directions over the earth's surface, and at the same time. Now if the earth were a globe, some of these rivers would be flowing uphill and others down, taking it for a fact that there really is an up and down in nature, whatever form she assumes. But since rivers do not flow uphill, and the globular theory requires that they should, it is a proof that the earth is not a globe." It is part of the natural physics of water and other fluids to always find their level and remain flat. If disturbed in any way, motion ensues until the flat level is resumed. If dammed up, then released, the nature of all liquids is to quickly flood outwards, taking the easiest course towards finding its new level. If the Earth is an extended flat plane, then this fundamental physical property of fluids finding and remaining level is consistent with experience and common sense. If, however, the Earth is a giant sphere, tilted on its vertical axis, spinning through never-ending space, then it follows that truly flat, consistently level surfaces do not exist here. There are rivers which flow east, west, north, and south. That is, rivers are flowing in all directions over the Earth's surface. Now, if the Earth were a globe, some of these rivers would be flowing uphill, and others down. Some of these rivers would be flowing uphill, others down. Rivers do not flow uphill. If the Earth were a globe, rolling and dashing through space at the rate of 100 miles in 5 seconds of time, the waters of seas and oceans could not, by any known law, be kept on its surface. Whenever experiments have been tried on the surface of standing water, the surface has always been found to be level. To drop the theory which supposes a curved surface to standing water is to acknowledge the facts. If the Earth were a globe, the surface of all standing water would be convex. This is an experimental proof that the Earth is not a globe. There are rivers which flow east, west, north, and south. Now, if the Earth were a globe, some of these rivers would be flowing uphill, and others down. Some of these rivers would be flowing uphill, others down. Rivers do not flow uphill. Rivers do not flow uphill. There are rivers which flow east, west, north, and south. Now, if the Earth were a globe, some of these rivers would be flowing uphill, and others down. Some of these rivers would be flowing uphill, and others down. Rivers do not flow uphill. Some of these rivers would be flowing uphill, others down. Rivers do not flow uphill. Some of these rivers would be flowing uphill, others down. Rivers do not flow uphill. Some of these rivers would be flowing uphill.
Flat Earth has long been touted as the mother of all conspiracy theories, suppressed and ridiculed for centuries as being an ignorant, unscientific worldview. But the facts of the matter are far from what you've been told. It is a fact, not a theory, that bodies of water always seek and find their own level. from a pond, lake, or an ocean, the natural physics of water is to find and remain level. It is a fact that the majority of Earth is covered in such level water, thus making it an unscientific theory to postulate that Earth is actually a gigantic sphere with bendy oceans curving all the way around it. It is an unproven, unscientific theory with no observable, measurable, or repeatable evidence to claim that bodies of water can somehow bend, cling to the exterior of shapes, and show convexity upon their surface. It is a fact, not a theory, that we are able to observe objects at incredibly long distances, far beyond what would be possible if Earth were a globe 25,000 miles in circumference, as we're told. For example, it is a fact that in Genoa, Italy, from just above sea level, it is possible to see the distant islands of Elba, Caprea, and Corsica 80 to 125 miles away. It is a necessary theory that the globe Earth must curve 8 inches per mile squared if it really be a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, as we're told. But based on such a theory, these islands would all be completely hidden behind thousands of feet of curved Earth. It is a fact, not a theory, that the horizon always appears perfectly flat, 360 degrees around the observer, regardless of altitude. All amateur balloon, rocket, plane, and drone footage show a completely flat horizon as high as we can reach, over 20 miles or 120,000 feet up. It is an observable, testable, repeatable, scientific fact of reality that Polaris, the North Pole star, situated perfectly over the North Pole center of Earth, never moves a single inch. Night after night, year after year, century after century, with all the other fixed stars remaining fixed in their relative constellations, revolving perfect circles around Polaris. It is also an unobservable, unscientific theory to claim that the Earth is spinning 1,000 miles per hour, and the Milky Way shoots millions of miles per hour more off through infinite space, when we cannot see, hear, feel, or otherwise observe or prove any such motion. And we can see clearly for ourselves Polaris never moving, and all the other stars revolving around it. This is just a brief introduction to the many observable, testable, repeatable scientific facts of our level, motionless plain Earth that have been suppressed and ridiculed for centuries in favor of various unobservable, untestable, unscientific theories purporting we live on a tilting, wobbling, spinning, ball-shaped Earth. To learn much more about this most important and highly censored topic, please follow the links in the description box.
ODD TV.
All I'm offering is the truth.
Hey everybody, what's going on? This is ODD. I want to address the insane amount of people that don't seem to understand how fisheye lenses or wide-angle lenses work. As a flat earther that makes videos on the subject, I consistently have people send me links to videos where they believe they are seeing the curvature of the Earth. But what they are actually seeing is a forced curve due to the lens of the camera. These lenses are called fisheye or wide-angle lenses, and they come standard on GoPro and TomTom cameras. In fact, all action cameras come standard with these lenses. The definition of a fisheye lens is an ultra-wide-angle lens that produces strong visual distortion to create a wide, panoramic, or hemispherical image.
When this lens is arranged sort of straight onto the horizon, it doesn't have any weird curvature or distortion. It just looks ultra wide. There might be a little bit of distortion on the edges, but it looks just super wide. Whenever you start to tilt it upwards or downwards, that's where you get the curvature distortion. So if you tilt the lens upwards in relationship to the horizon, it's going to kind of curve up and create a bowl type effect. If you tilt it downward, it's going to create a sphere or a kind of an orb type effect.
Besides Hollywood movies and TV shows, these wide-angle camera lenses are the only reason you'll ever witness curvature. It's the very reason why most people believe they have seen curvature. People send me links to endless amounts of videos shot with GoPros. This skydiving video, for instance. False curve. Here's a video from a balloon that was launched by a high school in South Carolina. Doesn't that seem like a bit much to you? Because at 120,000 plus feet, there is no curvature when you use a normal lens that's not distorted whatsoever. Another go-to video for people looking for curvature is the Felix Baumgartner Red Bull jump from 2012. People really believe that they are seeing a genuine curve here, but it's simply a fisheye lens. Otherwise, New Mexico takes up most of the planet. Wake up, ladies and gentlemen. They say Felix jumped from 126,000 feet, and this is how much curve there is. But again, look at footage from 121,000 feet on a camera without distortion, and you'll see the world how it really is. Curveless. Thanks for watching.
Dude, you're fucking retarded. Kill yourself and make sure you never reproduce, bro. Okay?
As far as the eye can see, the Earth is flat.